Annex 1. Nuclear-related measures. A. General. 1. The sequence of implementation of the commitments detailed in this annex is specified in Annex 5 to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPO. Unless otherwise specified, the durations of the commitments in this annex are from implementation day. B. Iraq Heavy Water Research Reactor. 2. Iran will modernize the Iraq Heavy Water Research Reactor to support peaceful nuclear research and radioisotopes production for medical and industrial purposes. Iran will redesign and rebuild the reactor, based on the agreed conceptual design, as attached to this annex, to support its peaceful nuclear research and production needs and purposes, including testing of fuel pins and assembly prototypes and structural materials. The design will be such as to minimize the production of plutonium and not to produce weapon-grade plutonium in normal operation. The power of the redesigned reactor will not exceed 20 MWth. The E3/EU+3 and Iran share the understanding that the parameters in the conceptual design are subject to possible and necessary adjustments in developing the final design while fully preserving the above-mentioned purposes and principles of modernization. 3. Iran will not pursue construction at the existing unfinished reactor based on its original design and will remove the existing calandria and retain it in Iran. The calandria will be made inoperable by filling any openings in the calandria with concrete such that the IAEA can verify that it will not be usable for a future nuclear application. In redesigning and reconstructing of the modernized Iraq Heavy Water Research Reactor, Iran will maximize the use of existing infrastructure already installed at the current Iraq Research Reactor. 4. Iran will take the leadership role as the owner and as the project manager, and have responsibility for overall implementation of the Iraq modernization project, with E3/EU+3 participants assuming responsibilities regarding the modernization of the Iraq reactor as described in this annex. A working group composed of E3/EU+3 participants will be established to facilitate the redesigning and rebuilding of the reactor. An international partnership composed of Iran and the working group would implement the Iraq modernization project. The working group could be enlarged to include other countries by consensus of the participants of the working group and Iran. E3/EU+3 participants and Iran will conclude an official document expressing their strong commitments to the Iraq modernization project in advance of implementation day, which would provide an assured path forward to modernize the reactor and would define the responsibilities assumed by the E3/EU+3 participants, and subsequently contracts would be concluded. The participants of the working group will provide assistance needed by Iran for redesigning and rebuilding the reactor, consistent with their respective national laws, in such a manner as to enable the safe and timely construction and commissioning of the modernized reactor. 5. Iran and the working group will cooperate to develop the final design of the modernized reactor and the design of the subsidiary laboratories to be carried out by Iran, and review conformity with international safety standards, such that the reactor can be licensed by the relevant Iranian regulatory authority for commissioning and operation. The final design of the modernized reactor and the design of the subsidiary laboratories will be submitted to the Joint Commission. The Joint Commission will aim to complete its review and endorsement within 3 months after the submission of the final design. If the Joint Commission does not complete its review and endorsement within 3 months, Iran could raise the issue through the dispute resolution mechanism envisaged by this JCPO. 6. The IAEA will monitor the construction and report to the working group for confirmation that the construction of the modernized reactor is consistent with the approved final design. 7. As the project manager, Iran will take responsibility for the construction efforts. E3/EU+3 parties will, consistent with their national laws, take appropriate administrative, legal, technical, and regulatory measures to support cooperation. E3/EU+3 parties will support the purchase by Iran, the transfer and supply of necessary materials, equipment, instrumentation and control systems and technologies required for the construction of the redesigned reactor, through the mechanism established by this JCPO, as well as through exploration of relevant funding contributions. 8. E3/EU+3 parties will also support and facilitate the timely and safe construction of the modernized Iraq reactor and its subsidiary laboratories, upon request by Iran, through IAEA technical cooperation if appropriate, including but not limited to technical and financial assistance, supply of required materials and equipment, state-of-the-art instrumentation and control systems and equipment, and support for licensing and authorization. 9. The redesigned reactor will use up to 3.67% enriched uranium in the form of UO2 with a mass of approximately 350 kg of UO2 in a full core load, with a fuel designed to be reviewed and approved by the Joint Commission. The international partnership with the participation of Iran will fabricate the initial fuel core load for the reactor outside Iran. The international partnership will cooperate with Iran, including through technical assistance, to fabricate, test and license fuel fabrication capabilities in Iran for subsequent fuel core reloads for future use with this reactor. Destructive and non-destructive testing of this fuel, including post-irradiation examination, PI, will take place in one of the participating countries outside of Iran, and that country will work with Iran to license the subsequent fuel fabricated in Iran for the use in the redesigned reactor under IAEA monitoring. 10. Iran will not produce or test natural uranium pellets, fuel pins, or fuel assemblies, which are specifically designed for the support of the originally designed Iraq reactor, designated by the IAEA as IR-40. Iran will store under IAEA continuous monitoring all existing natural uranium pellets and IR-40 fuel assemblies until the modernized Iraq reactor becomes operational, at which point these natural uranium pellets and IR-40 fuel assemblies will be converted to UNH, or exchanged with an equivalent quantity of natural uranium. Iran will make the necessary technical modifications to the natural uranium fuel production process line that was intended to supply fuel for the IR-40 reactor design, such that it can be used for the fabrication of the fuel reloads for the modernized Iraq reactor. 11. All spent fuel from the redesigned Iraq reactor, regardless of its origin, for the lifetime of the reactor, will be shipped out of Iran to a mutually determined location in E3/EU plus 3 countries or third countries, for further treatment or disposition as provided for in relevant contracts to be concluded, consistent with national laws, with the recipient party, within 1 year from the unloading from the reactor or whenever deemed to be safe for transfer by the recipient country. 12. Iran will submit the DIQ of the redesigned reactor to the IAEA, which will include information on the planned radioisotope production and reactor operation program. The reactor will be operated under IAEA monitoring. 13. Iran will operate the fuel manufacturing plant only to produce fuel assemblies for light water reactors and reloads for the modernized Iraq reactor. See heavy water production plant. 14. All excess heavy water which is beyond Iran's needs for the modernized Iraq research reactor, the zero-power heavy water reactor, quantities needed for medical research and production of deuterate solutions and chemical compounds including, where appropriate, contingency stocks, will be made available for export to the international market based on international prices and delivered to the international buyer for 15 years. Iran's needs, consistent with the parameters above, are estimated to be 130 metric tons of nuclear-grade heavy water or its equivalent in different enrichments prior to commissioning of the modernized Iraq research reactor, and 90 metric tons after the commissioning, including the amount contained in the reactor. 15. Iran will inform the IAEA about the inventory and the production of the HWPP and will allow the IAEA to monitor the quantities of the heavy water stocks and the amount of heavy water produced, including through IAEA visits, as requested, to the HWPP. D. Other reactors. 16. Consistent with its plan, Iran will keep pace with the trend of international technological advancement in relying only on light water for its future nuclear power and research reactors with enhanced international cooperation including assurances of supply of necessary fuel. 17. Iran intends to ship out all spent fuel for all future and present nuclear power and research reactors, for further treatment or disposition as provided for in relevant contracts to be concluded consistent with national laws with the recipient party. Spent fuel reprocessing activities. 18. For 15 years Iran will not, and does not intend to thereafter, engage in any spent fuel reprocessing or spent fuel reprocessing R&D activities. For the purpose of this annex, spent fuel includes all types of irradiated fuel. 19. For 15 years Iran will not, and does not intend to thereafter, reprocess spent fuel except for irradiated enriched uranium targets for production of radioisotopes for medical and peaceful industrial purposes. 15 years Iran will not, and does not intend to thereafter, develop, acquire or build facilities capable of separation of plutonium, uranium, or neptunium from spent fuel or from fertile targets, other than for production of radioisotopes for medical and peaceful industrial purposes. 21 For 15 years, Iran will only develop, acquire, build, or operate hot cells, containing a cell or interconnected cells, shielded cells, or shielded glove boxes with dimensions less than 6 cubic meters in volume compatible with the specifications set out in Annex 1 of the additional protocol. These will be co-located with the modernized Iraq Research Reactor, the Tehran Research Reactor, and radiomedicine production complexes, and only capable of the separation and processing of industrial or medical isotopes and non-destructive Pi. The needed equipment will be acquired through the procurement mechanism established by this JCPO. For 15 years, Iran will develop, acquire, build, or operate hot cells, containing a cell or interconnected cells, shielded cells, or shielded glove boxes with dimensions beyond 6 cubic meters in volume and specifications set out in Annex 1 of the additional protocol, only after approval by the Joint Commission. 22 The E3/EU+3 are ready to facilitate all of the destructive and non-destructive examinations on fuel elements and/or fuel assembly prototypes including Pi for all fuel fabricated in or outside Iran and irradiated in Iran, using their existing facilities outside Iran. Except for the Iraq Research Reactor Complex, Iran will not develop, build, acquire, or operate hot cells capable of performing Pi or seek to acquire equipment to build/develop such a capability, for 15 years. 23 For 15 years, in addition to continuing current fuel testing activities at the TRR, Iran will undertake non-destructive post-irradiation examination, Pi, of fuel pins, fuel assembly prototypes and structural materials. These examinations will be exclusively at the Iraq Research Reactor Complex. However, the E3/EU+3 will make available their facilities to conduct destructive testing with Iranian specialists, as agreed. The hot cells at the Iraq Research Reactor in which non-destructive Pi are performed will not be physically interconnected to cells that process or handle materials for the production of medical or industrial radioisotopes. 24 For 15 years, Iran will not engage in producing or acquiring plutonium or uranium metals or their alloys, or conducting R&D on plutonium or uranium, or their alloys, metallurgy, or casting, forming, or machining plutonium or uranium metal. 25 Iran will not produce, seek, or acquire separated plutonium, highly enriched uranium, defined as 20% or greater uranium-235 or uranium-233 or neptunium-237, except for use as laboratory standards or in instruments using neptunium-237, for 15 years. 26 If Iran seeks to initiate R&D on uranium metal-based TRR fuel in small agreed quantities after 10 years and before 15 years, Iran will present its plan to, and seek approval by, the Joint Commission. Enrichment capacity. 27 Iran will keep its enrichment capacity at no more than 5,060 IR1 centrifuge machines and no more than 30 cascades in their current configurations in currently operating units at the Natanz Fuel Enrichment Plant, FEP, for 10 years. 28 Iran will keep its level of uranium enrichment at up to 3.67% for 15 years. 29 Iran will remove the following excess centrifuges and infrastructure not associated with 5,060 IR1 centrifuges in FEP, which will be stored at Natanz in Hall B of FEP under IAEA continuous monitoring. 29.1 All excess centrifuge machines, including IR2M centrifuges. Excess IR1 centrifuges will be used for the replacement of failed or damaged centrifuges of the same type on a one-for-one basis. 29.2 UF6 pipework including subheaders, valves, and pressure transducers at cascade level, and frequency inverters, and UF6 withdrawal equipment from one of the withdrawal stations, which is currently not in service, including its vacuum pumps and chemical traps. 30 For the purpose of this annex, the IAEA will confirm through the established practice the failed or damaged status of centrifuge machines before removal. 31 For 15 years, Iran will install gas centrifuge machines, or enrichment-related infrastructure, whether suitable for uranium enrichment, research and development, or stable isotope enrichment, exclusively at the locations and for the activities specified under this JCPO. G. Centrifuges and development. 32 Iran will continue to conduct enrichment R&D in a manner that does not accumulate enriched uranium. For 10 years and consistent with its enrichment R&D plan, Iran's enrichment R&D with uranium will only include IR4, IR5, IR6, and IR8 centrifuges. Mechanical testing on up to 2 single centrifuges for each type will be carried out only on the IR2M, IR4, IR5, IR6, IR6S, IR7 and IR8. Iran will build or test, with or without uranium, only those gas centrifuges specified in this JCPO. 33 Consistent with its plan, Iran will continue working with the 164 machine IR2M cascade at PFEP in order to complete the necessary tests until November 30, 2015 or the day of implementation of this JCPO, whichever comes later, and after that it will take these machines out of the PFEP and store them under IAEA continuous monitoring at Natanz in Hall B of FEP. 34 Consistent with its plan, Iran will continue working with the 164 machine IR4 cascade at PFEP in order to complete the necessary tests until November 30, 2015 or the day of implementation of this JCPO, whichever comes later, and after that it will take these machines out of the PFEP and store them under IAEA continuous monitoring at Natanz in Hall B of FEP. 35 Iran will continue the testing of a single IR4 centrifuge machine and IR4 centrifuge cascade of up to 10 centrifuge machines for 10 years. 36 Iran will test a single IR5 centrifuge machine for 10 years. 37 Iran will continue testing of the IR6 on single centrifuge machines and its intermediate cascades and will commence testing of up to 30 centrifuge machines from 1.5 years before the end of year 10. Iran will proceed from single centrifuge machines and small cascades to intermediate cascades in a logical sequence. 38 Iran will commence, upon start of implementation of the JCPO, testing of the IR8 on single centrifuge machines and its intermediate cascades and will commence the testing of up to 30 centrifuges machines from 1.5 years before the end of year 10. Iran will proceed from single centrifuges to small cascades to intermediate cascades in a logical sequence. 39 For 10 years, Iran, consistent with the established practice, will recombine the enriched and depleted streams from the IR6 and IR8 cascades through the use of welded pipework on withdrawal main headers in a manner that precludes the withdrawal of enriched and depleted uranium materials and verified by the IAEA. 40 For 15 years, Iran will conduct all testing of centrifuges with uranium only at the PFEP. Iran will conduct all mechanical testing of centrifuges only at the PFEP and the Tehran Research Center. 41 For the purpose of adapting PFEP to the R&D activities in the enrichment and enrichment R&D plan, Iran will remove all centrifuges except those needed for testing as described in the relevant paragraphs above, except for the IR1 cascade, number 1, as described below. For the full IR1 cascade, number 6, Iran will modify associated infrastructure by removing UF6 pipework, including subheaders, valves, and pressure transducers at cascade level, and frequency inverters. The IR1 cascade, number 1, centrifuges will be kept but made inoperable, as verified by the IAEA, through the removal of centrifuge rotors and the injection of epoxy resin into the subheaders, feeding, product, and tails pipework, and the removal of controls and electrical systems for vacuum, power, and cooling. Excess centrifuges and infrastructure will be stored at Natanz in Hall B of FEP under IAEA continuous monitoring. The R&D space in line number 6 will be left empty until Iran needs to use it for its R&D program. 42 Consistent with the activities in the enrichment and enrichment R&D plan, Iran will maintain the cascade infrastructure for testing of single centrifuges and small and intermediate cascades in 2 R&D lines, number 2 and number 3, and will adapt 2 other lines, number 4 and number 5, with infrastructure similar to that for lines number 2 and number 3 in order to enable future R&D activities as specified in this JPO. Adaptation will include modification of all UF6 pipework, including removal of all subheaders except as agreed as needed for the R&D program, and associated instrumentation to be compatible with single centrifuges and small and intermediate cascade testing instead of full-scale testing. 43. Consistent with its plan and internationally established practices, Iran intends to continue R&D on new types of centrifuges through computer modeling and simulations, including at universities. For any such project to proceed to a prototype stage for mechanical testing within 10 years, a full presentation to, and approval by, the Joint Commission is needed. Fordow Fuel Enrichment Plant. 44. The Fordow Fuel Enrichment Plant, FFEP, will be converted into a nuclear, physics, and technology center, and international collaboration will be encouraged in agreed areas of research. The Joint Commission will be informed in advance of the specific projects that will be undertaken at Fordow. 45. Iran will not conduct any uranium enrichment or any uranium enrichment related R&D and will have no nuclear material at the Fordow Fuel Enrichment Plant, FFEP, for 15 years. 46. For 15 years, Iran will maintain no more than 1,044 IR-1 centrifuge machines at one wing of the FFEP, of which 46.12 cascades that have not experienced UF6 before will be modified for the production of stable isotopes. The transition to stable isotope production of these cascades at FFEP will be conducted in joint partnership between the Russian Federation and Iran on the basis of arrangements to be mutually agreed upon. To prepare these two cascades for installation of a new cascade architecture appropriate for stable isotope production by the joint partnership, Iran will remove the connection to the UF6 feed main header, and move cascade UF6 pipework, except for the dump line in order to maintain vacuum, to storage in Fordow under IAEA continuous monitoring. The Joint Commission will be informed about the conceptual framework of stable isotope production at FFEP. 46.244 cascades with all associated infrastructure remaining except for pipework that enables crossover tandem connections. 2 will be placed in an idle state, not spinning. The other 2 cascades will continue to spin until the transition to stable isotope production described in the previous subparagraph has been completed. Upon completion of the transition to stable isotope production described in the previous subparagraph, these 2 spinning cascades will be placed in an idle state, not spinning. 47. Iran will 47.1 remove the other 2 cascades of IR-1 centrifuges from this wing, by removing all centrifuges and cascade UF6 pipework, including subheaders, valves, and pressure transducers at cascade level, and frequency inverters. 47.2 also subsequently remove cascade electrical cabling, individual cascade control cabinets and vacuum pumps. All these excess centrifuges and infrastructure will be stored at Natanz in Hall B of FEP under IAEA continuous monitoring. 48. Iran will 48.1 remove all excess centrifuges and uranium enrichment related infrastructure from the other wing of the FFEP. This will include removal of all centrifuges and UF6 pipework, including subheaders, valves, and pressure gauges and transducers, and frequency inverters and converters, and UF6 feed and withdrawal stations. 48.2 also subsequently remove cascade electrical cabling, individual cascade control cabinets, vacuum pumps and centrifuge mounting blocks. All these excess centrifuges and infrastructure will be stored at Natanz in Hall B of FEP under IAEA continuous monitoring. 49 centrifuges from the 4 idle cascades may be used for the replacement of failed or damaged centrifuges in stable isotope production at Fordow. 50. Iran will limit its stable isotope production activities with gas centrifuges to the FFEP for 15 years and will use no more than 348 IR-1 centrifuges for these activities at the FFEP. The associated R&D activities in Iran will occur at the FFEP and at Iran's declared and monitored centrifuge manufacturing facilities for testing, modification, and balancing these IR-1 centrifuges. 51. The IAEA will establish a baseline for the amount of uranium legacy from past enrichment operations that will remain in Fordow. Iran will permit the IAEA regular access, including daily as requested by the IAEA, access to the FFEP in order to monitor Iran's production of stable isotopes and the absence of undeclared nuclear material and activities at the FFEP for 15 years.